what's your biggest concern with China on where they were before, where they are now? Are they becoming more powerful? Are they getting weaker? Because there's a community of people that are saying behind closed doors, China's not doing as good as people think. This whole concept of the one-child family that they did, they backfired on them because they're getting older. People are leaving. They're not even sticking around anymore. Billionaires are leaving. Job creators are leaving. That thing's about to collapse. Is it a real threat as it was before? Are they getting weaker? What are your thoughts on China?
It's the greatest existential threat this country in the world faces. That is clear. Let me let your folks know. It's like I started writing about this back in 2006. I wrote a trilogy of books: The Coming China Wars, in 2006, Death by China, which was both a book and a film, in 2011, and just before I went in the Trump administration, Crouching Tiger. The first two books were about the economic threat. The last book was about the military threat. Now, the punchline here is that as bad as I said it was in those three books, as much crap I took from the legacy media and all the kind of like, oh, no. I'm the guy who had a top level, unlike Hunter Biden, I got a top-level security clearance. I get to see the highest level stuff. Without giving any secrets away, I can tell you that whatever I said about China in my books is far worse. Far worse. And if you here's the thing. It's like I was with President Trump by his side when he went face-to-face with the dictator Xi Jinping, right? And one of the advantages they have is that they don't have elections, right? So their team, right? Their team is the same team when we faced them as it was with Biden, right? I sat face to face with these guys, and what Trump tried to do, and I think it was the right thing to do given the political climate at the time. I wanted to come in hard. It's like, these people, you can't trust them. Just put the tariffs on them and make them stop doing what I called the 7 deadly sins, all the crap they do to steal our jobs in factories. And then he said, no. We're gonna steadily put on some tariffs, but we're gonna try to cut a deal with them. And, in Buenos Aires, we sat face to face. In Osaka, Japan, we sat face to face at the G20. And all we learned, my friend, is that they're just stringing us along. That whenever you sit to negotiate with them, they'll agree pretty much to anything. And then at the end of the day, they just wait you out and they break every agreement you set. So you can't. So the policy needs to be, and I think President Trump was clearly going to adopt this as soon as that second term began, is what we call decoupling the U.S. economy. I don't know if you know this, but the trade deficit we have with communist China, never call it China, it's communist China, let's be clear about what it is about roughly equal to their defense budget. So in effect, every time we go into Walmart, Target, and buy that crap, which usually is stolen designs from American designers, we're funding what is an incredible arsenal pointed at our Navy in particular in the South and East China Sea. And the threats are many and varied, but you just start with asymmetric warfare. What is that? That's being able to sink a $5 billion aircraft carrier with a $1 million missile. Okay, they've got. There's a chapter in my Crouching Tiger book. Missiles are us. I mean, they got more missiles than any country in the world. They're just. It's like, as Stalin said, quantity has a quality of its own. They can hit the palace in Taiwan in 7 minutes from the mainland. And you know what they call aircraft carriers, American aircraft carriers in China, communist China. Targets, right? It's like a stupid way. It's a stupid way to conduct warfare with communist China. You don't put big aircraft carriers in the Taiwan Straits and not expect those things not to get shot down. I mean, we should be putting all our money into sea mines ringed around Taiwan if we want to take that democracy seriously, and submarines, just quiet submarines.
So let me ask you. So you said a lot of different things. You said it's a lot worse than you think it is. When we went and negotiated with them, I was in those rooms and we're sitting with these guys and we're talking to them. They would make all the promises. They would come back. They would literally break every single one of the promises in the negotiation. Outside of that, they got more missiles than anybody else. They can sink a $5 billion with a $1 million missile, and they can, within 7 minutes, attack the Taiwan, palace. All of that stuff is public stuff that we know. Okay, what I want to know is, if you're saying it's worse than what you know, right?
Yeah.
What do we not know that is worse than what we know?
Well, the broad strokes have to do with the elements of, for example, China 2025, which
the Made in China 2025.
Yes, right. And the idea was that strategically they want to take over the key strategic tech sectors that are going to determine the future. So AI is certainly one of them. Blockchain. Let's talk about blockchain technology. Okay, what we need to know. Okay, and there's certain things I can and cannot say, but the question is, blockchain technology is the technology which is used to encrypt things like Bitcoin and all our banking system. And if you have the key to unlock that blockchain technology as a weapon of warfare, when the time comes, you can bring down the entire financial system of the United States in nanoseconds.
When the time comes.
When the time comes. And when would that time come? For example, Xi Jinping. Okay, you mentioned, some people are saying China's not that doing that great and they got trouble and this, that, and the other thing. Well, that's dangerous, because if Xi Jinping gets into domestic trouble, the first thing he's going to do is what? You know the expression, wag the dog. Wag the dog is going to mean a run on Taiwan. We're going to have some kind of reaction. And, what do? Do you send carriers into the South China Sea? As soon as one of those sinks, it's game on. Or do you blockade the routes that that oil comes from the Persian Gulf to China? I mean, they're 70% of their oil comes from the Persian. I mean, as soon as that kind of stuff happens, then the asymmetric warfare, what they call the unrestricted warfare, kicks in. That's like knocking. I mean, they have the capability right now. They can knock our satellites out of the sky. They can use viruses probably to take out our electric power grid. And all these balloons that you've seen floating over the United States, that's part of their information gathering process to execute their unrestricted warfare techniques when it's just the only thing holding them back is the fact that we're their cash cow. We're the tit they suck on, right? We're it. We're Uncle Sucker. And the way they lifted 250 million peasants at least up into status as sweatshops was by running big trade surpluses with the United States. So this is like, it goes on and on and on. I wrote this in 2006. It reads like a Pentagon report today, and all we get is rhetoric and BS from the corporate media and the Congress.
So let's stay on that. So these double Ds that China keeps sucking our nipples off of, right?
Yeah.
And they've been doing it for a while. And they've flattened a little bit, okay, the last couple of years. So, because now, especially when Trump was there and you were there, and you tariff after tariff after tariff after tariff. Hey, Huawei CFO was in Canada doing a deal with Iran, and we found out, guess what, Huawei, you're out. Boom, Huawei loses a third of their valuation. Hey, that person's doing what they're doing. Boom. I was in Monaco, and I'm sitting there talking to a pretty connected guy in politics from Lebanon who was doing a lot of the things for the countries there, and he says, you don't even understand the tariffs Trump put on Iran, how much he's hurting Iran's economy right now, how much they're being affected. I'm in this on a daily basis. I'm having these types of conversations to see what's going on. So let's look at both sides. So the only reason why they haven't yet, they can attack Taiwan, they can do this to the, financial system, they can do a cyber attack, they can do all these different sorts of things, right? And hey, the fact that they are going through the bad thing, we got to be careful because the whole wag the dog concept, what's going to happen next. Okay, cool. So why don't they? Well, because they're sucking on our nipples. So if we do put the tariffs and we keep it there, and we make them drown to the point of catastrophe happening there, then it's definite that they're going to do something. No?
Yeah, and that's not the goal. The goal is a strong America, and the way you get to that is simply wean yourself from the factory floor of communist China and their supply chains. If we've learned anything from the pandemic, we will be a stronger, more resilient country if we have our manufacturing base and our supply chains here, or at least much closer to here. And China, look, if we totally decoupled from communist China, they'd still grow. I mean, that genie's out of the bottle. They're in Africa. They're in all of South America. The Europeans welcome them with open arms. But this is not about that. This is about defending ourselves, peace through strength. And it's peace through economic strength. It's peace through national security. And this whole thing, look, these folks you talk to, oh, they're hurting Iran, this, that, and the other thing. The problem is, since we've gone at it with half measures, it's actually strengthening communist China's hand in places like Iran. Why? Because they are using the American sanctions, right? What are financial sanctions? Sanctions are like you can't trade in U.S. dollars if you do X, right? Right. So if Iran gives weapons or whatever to the Russians and the Ukraine, it's a sanction, whatever. But the problem is that if you are able to create a yuan ruble-based currency system, then you don't have to worry about sanctions. And so every time we've imposed sanctions in a half-measured way, it's given Russia, Iran, and communist China the incentive to create this alternative currency world. And right now they're going hard at it. I mean, Brazil and Lula, that's like Brazil under Lula is like a colony of the communist Chinese. Peru is very much at risk as well. And the reason is what they call the debt trap diplomacy. That's where China will come in and they'll just shower these countries with money in order to get infrastructure in there, and there's so much grift associated with it that the leaders will kind of skim off the top and put their Swiss bank accounts in. You turn around, and next thing you know, China forecloses on the port in Sri Lanka, and now they own it. And that's like a strategic naval hub. So, I mean, this is a big three-dimensional chess game, and we're playing checkers.
I want to ask you one more question, and then Tom, I want you, and I think you got some thoughts you want to share. So here's a question on this. So, in a competitive environment, which we are right now, it's a competitive climate that we have, but it's from ideology competitive environment. It's different than capitalism. Capitalism, you're trying to get a market share here, a market share there, region, all this other stuff. Politics is the way you think, as well as some resources, right? And they're doing a very good job with getting the right resources, Iran, Africa, they're doing the right things from the competitive standpoint. But if we go back and look at the case study of tariffs, because I am for tariffs in many cases, the part that was for me a bit strange is China not letting any of our media companies be in China, Facebook, YouTube, all this stuff, but we have to use your stuff here. That to me is a dumb negotiation tactics. I'll lift the tariffs if you allow all our social media companies in your country, because we got to know what you got going on. And I'm not lifting these tariffs until you do that, because My concern is we need to know what the hell your people are happy about, not happy about. You can find out about our people. You can go on Facebook and see all these videos with George Floyd, the video. It's, oh my God, look what's going on in USA. Look what's going on in the streets. Look what's going on with Antifa. Look what's going on. Well, great. You have that access to all that data. We don't have access to all that data. So I do think we have to use tariffs in a way for us to get more citizen journalism in China, for us to say, that's how you treat people, we're not for it. That's how you do this, we're not for it. And then we can get more common sense, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of ideology, freedom of all this stuff being injected in China. And then the Chinese people are going to say, look, we don't like the way you're doing this. We got to kind of change. So I think the social media pushing and our media being in China will be my number one thing. That's me. Then the other part is we're giving you all this money. We're not getting it in return. You're winning from us. Now you got 80% of chips. All our ACs are pretty much being made in your country. When COVID happened, you shut down your manufacturing. We couldn't do anything with cars. Car prices went up 45%, 60%. The average car payment today in U.S. went from 4 years ago being $550 to $917 a month, when the income hasn't really increased dramatically. That's a massive increase on what's going on. So Americans are now feeling it. But this is the question. How does one, based on the years that you were with President Trump, what did you learn for the next people that are going to come in? And maybe if Trump goes in, or maybe, another person is in the White House and it's not Biden's camp, because you say you have security clearance. Hunter Biden has the kind of clearance you don't even have. And it's a different kind of clearance. It's called a daddy clearance, and you don't have that kind of clearance. So I know you're very excited about your clearance, but his clearance is more effective than yours, because he's able to make money off that clearance, and you cannot.
Although you look nice, I'd buy a painting from you.
That's you look like an artist. That's a good point. But going back to it, so imagine.
I paint left-handed, by the way, just to exercise the other part of my brain.
Powerful.
Yeah,
so much
powerful.
the better.
So whoever the next administration is going to be, so whoever the next Peter Navarro of Trump's administration is going to be, or a DeSantis administration is going to be, whoever the next person is going to be, how would you use tariffs and learn from mistakes and things that we did right? So if we had another shot at negotiating with these guys, what would we be asking for?
Yeah.
And where's a pain point with them? Well, they'll move.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think the best ticket is Trump-DeSantis, where DeSantis does VP for 4 years and then gets 8 more years. And I wish that they can come to some kind of agreement on that. And I wrote about that in my Taking Back Trump's America book, and have urged that publicly. Okay, so to your question, let's first of all be careful about using tariffs as a bargaining chip. For example, China loves that, right? They're very transactional. So you could imagine a discussion now with Xi Jinping and Joe Biden. Hey, Xi says to Biden, you get rid of the tariffs on us and we won't sell weapons to Russia. Okay, wait a minute. That leaves us no better off in terms of the economy than when we started. Let's understand the function of tariffs. What we have in this world, writ large, and it's just not, you mentioned Germany, but it's Europe, it's Brazil, it's India, it's Vietnam. We have a world in which virtually all of the major trading partners charge systematically higher tariffs on the United States than we charge on them. Mm-hmm. So I just had a chapter come out in a book that the Heritage Foundation did, which is what are the policies for 2024 for the presidential candidates. And in that, I dusted off from the president's State of the Union speech, I think it was in 2019, the Reciprocal Trade Act. Right? The Reciprocal Trade Act simply says that, hey, we'll lower our tariffs to yours, but if you have higher tariffs than ours and you won't lower yours, then we'll raise those to yours.
You think that's effective?
It would be damn effective. You know who has the highest tariffs in the world relative to us? India. Call it the Maharaja of tariffs. But having said that, the function of tariffs is basically to offset unfair trade advantage. Okay? countries in the world, they engage in export subsidies, the VAT tax versus the income tax. The VAT tax is like a form of an export subsidy that makes it very difficult. China has massive government subsidies. They steal our intellectual property. They force our technology transfer. All that, the whole function of the tariff is to level the playing field for the American worker. The American worker is the most productive in the world and can compete on a level playing field, but not when other countries cheat. Having said all of that, with communist China, it's got to be decoupling. There's no modus vivendi with communist China. They want to kill us. They want this country, and they are in every which way till Sunday. They inundate our universities with sons and daughters of the Chinese Communist Party. They push our kids out, and while they're there, they're wrangled by these Chinese secret police so they don't go off the reservation. And what are they there for? To steal our intellectual property. So it's just we are so naive. I remember back when I got started on all of this, I used to go out and do a lot of public speaking to corporate audience before I got canceled. That's a whole nother issue. And I'd go talk to these trade groups, and these guys would come up, and they grown men in tears saying, "Hey, I went over with this great design to have it produced in China. And by the time I got home, it was in the Walmart under their brand." No, it's like, yeah, well, how stupid is that, right? It's like they're playing a different game. I mean, there's no morals, there's no ethics, there's no rules of capitalism. It's just crush us any way they can. So why would you trade with these people? Why would you do that? There's no reason right now to trade with China. I mean, they've got us, penicillin, we need that. There's certain things we're going to need for a while, but that tells you in and of itself you need to get off that.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.